It's 2023 and there's no sign of the RC crawler world slowing down. In fact, it's heating up even more now that Vanquish just dropped their very first ready to run. Yeah, that means you can get right behind the wheel of a VS4-10 Phoenix straight axle without any building, and it's equipped with some really good electronics. It's looking like an amazing kit to get you started off right. We've reviewed the VS4-10 Pro here on the channel and the Phoenix Portal kit version. The straight axle version looks really good. I wanted to try this out, and it's really good that it comes ready to run so we can just hit the trails right after we go over the details on it. Now, it comes with a pre-painted body from the factory, even decaled in this gray, or they have a red version. Love that it still has the molded grille, clear lenses so you could add the lights later, even has the radiator behind it, tinted windows through the decals, licensing logos on the side. They don't give you the rear bed sides with this kit. I actually like it open cage, and then they don't give you the interior. You could of course go and buy the interior set yourself if you really want it, but at least we've got clear windows so we don't have to deal with scraping off any paint or anything. It does have the same body mounting system, which is really easy to access. Now let's get down to the four corners. It does have the Falcon Wild Peak tires in the red compound, pretty stiff inserts, and then these are licensed KMC wheels, B-Lock style wheels with metal rings on both sides, and behind it machined aluminum 12mm hexes. Okay, I'll pull the body off now. I already have the clips out. The body is actually pinned in the center as well to help keep it rigid. Okay, this probably looks really familiar. Starting with the VS4-10 chassis kit, stamped metal frame rails, high clearance. This is a proven setup. I love the cross bracing on this because it's solid. It does add a little bit of weight, but this is a really rigid structure. Love that they give you the inner fender wells. You could go add rock lights, and it's formed to the contour of the body. Fuel tank setup out back, so you go put a spare battery in there if you want to go power some rock lights with it. Up front, really simple small bumper, so you just got tons of clearance. Same with the rear bumper. The battery tray accepts a standard size battery, Velcro straps to hold it down. There's that radiator I was telling you guys about up front. Now the suspension, aluminum shocks, metal pivot balls, thick shock shaft, stainless steel incision links, metal pivot balls, and the standard rod ends that we've seen before. Hopefully they've changed the material on these. I've noticed these stretching a little bit and guys swapping it out, but still have metal stainless steel links up front for the steering and the panhard bar setup. Speaking of the panhard bar setup, the mount to the chassis is machined aluminum, not some stamped metal or anything like that. Nice machine piece, anodized black. And as always, I mean, the suspension looks awesome on these. Even the rear is triangulated to a multiple boss setup on the rear axle. Dual shear mounts for all of the link positions, so you don't have to worry about a link popping off while you're driving. Now let's get into the drivetrain. The straight axle setup, these are molded F10 axles, and they're really stout looking. These may not be the amazing CNC machined aluminum units that they offer, but for a composite housing, man, that just looks awesome. Look at the bracing up top on that. And then it goes out to composite steering knuckles, and you get a 45-degree or 47-degree steering angle, which is just necessary nowadays. And then if you look closely at the end of the axles, incision universals, ball bearings supported, rubber ball bearings throughout, rubber seal ball bearings throughout this, metal gears on the inside, the incision locker, and it's the high pinion angle. Metal gears, again, throughout the entire driveline, including the VFD transmission. This has all metal gears, chrome moly shafts throughout, and you notice the unique design of this. We've got the motor mounted up front, down below, to keep the weight down and centralized. The spur gears up front with a long shaft to the back where the business end of this transmission is. And if you're familiar with this transmission, you know that it has a selectable overdrive and a dig built into it. All the gears are provided in here. You can see the metal levers on the outside, which will allow you to shift the overdrive or use the dig function. They're just locked out on this. So you can go and add servos later on down the road and operate those functions if you want to. They deleted the 2 servos for that from the factory to help reduce the cost of the kit, help you get into this truck, which is really cool. I had a lot of people asking me about the Portal kit when I built it, if there's any way to reduce the price, because they thought you needed those servos. and you don't. You could add those later. They give you all hardware. And then they have the slider drive shafts in the center down to the axles. Now, I guess we should talk about some of the ready to run equipment that this is set up with. It has a Metal Gear high torque servo. It's labeled as a Vanquish servo and has a metal servo horn on it. Here's the Hobbywing 1060 speed controller, branded for Vanquish, set up in their specs, and then the VR1 receiver that mates up to a radio that you really need to see. I'll show you that in a second. The motor is your basic 35 turn can motor. And yes, to answer one of the most important questions, these electronics are waterproof. And the ESC is fitted with an XT60 connector. Okay, now one of the coolest parts of this kit, the radio system. And there's not many times where I say that with a ready to run. This is the Vanquish VT1 radio. Check this thing out. It has a digital screen on it. It's a 4-channel radio system, comfortable grip on the handle, good trigger control, and a foam wheel. Love the foam wheel. But since this is 4 channels, when you do go and upgrade your electronics, if you want to add the servos, you'll be able to keep this radio system. It's a 15 model memory radio, gives you all the functions that you need to set up your servos. I'm really liking this. I can't wait to drive with it. Just been fooling around with it in the workshop, really impressed by it. Okay, there is the box that it comes in, and then they give you all the plastics that would come with building up a kit. So you got, here's your steering wheel, some of your lights, some transmission parts, and then the important parts I was telling you about to go add those servos in. There's the shift linkage there. Even some of the transmission parts, slider shafts, AA batteries for the radios, spare parts bag with a cross wrench, manuals for the radio system, speed controller for building up the truck if you ever need to take it apart, and of course some decals. So you could go throw some more decals on here, show your love for Vanquish, and we need to go out, drive this thing, because I've been dying to try out one of these straight axle setups. Man, my favorite spot over here is covered in water because it's been raining the past few days, but it's not going to stop me from driving the Phoenix ready to run. So far, this thing has just been so buttery smooth. I think they built this thing better than I built my Portal kit. Here's a great spot to show you guys how the suspension works. So far, it's just been nailing every line. I did do a little tweaking to the radio. I added some more steering to it and gave it a little bit of negative expo just because the throttle was a little too touchy. Look at that. Yeah. This is a decent spot to show you guys some side hilling. Actually, if you look back at some of my other videos, you'll see some crawlers here and they roll over. But the Phoenix is working it. And those tires are really gripping too. Might be hard to see on the screen, but there is a serious angle to this rock, and if I roll this thing, it's going down into that raging water. Nice and smooth, so much control. This is really one of the most impressive ready-to-run rigs I've tested here on the channel. Look at that steering. So I've tested a lot of scale and trail off-road trucks here on the channel, but of all the rigs that we've tested, this is probably one of my favorite ready-to-runs. For a stock out-of-the-box rig, the handling is very impressive. The feel of the truck is very impressive, and I had a great time driving it. This rig really handled well on the rocks. I was surprised how well these red dot tires grip the surface. I like how the rig side hills, how it attacks the incline. Descents, it did fairly well, but there is some limitations to the drag brake of the ESC. It's common with a ready-to-run speed controller system, but the 35 turn motor, I think, had plenty of power. I was running it on 3S, certainly plenty of power to bump up any ledges, plenty of power to motor down the trails. And then the steering works really well. I did have to increase the throw on the radio system, and this radio system's awesome, but out of the box, it was a bit limited. I think they had it dialed down to like 60%. I would say it was 60%. So I turned it up to full throw in each direction, and that's when the steering was just awesome. Plenty of torque from the servo to hold those wheels as well for the type of driving that I was doing. I took a look over the truck after multiple runs, actually took it up to RC Madness and drove it on their outdoor course. Took a look at the truck, not a lot of wear and tear that I'm noticing yet. Did pop one ball link off, you know, the usual scrapes and scratches underneath the truck. The tire bulge on the side is kind of weird. One of the tires looks like it's maybe the foam is offset inside. I think I'm gonna get some wheels anyway, so I'll just go and reset those tires. I'm gonna use these tires again when I get those new wheels. The radio system on this, I do have to give props to this. I don't think you're ever going to replace this. A really good system, a lot of tunability to it. Again, I went in, adjusted the throttle expo to make the throttle feel a little bit softer so it wasn't so touchy, and I just really enjoyed the drive once I made those simple tweaks through this radio system. Vanquish did a really impressive job on their first ready to run, and they have plenty of option parts for it as well once you go and grow into this. I think I'm gonna go throw some servos in to take advantage of the overdrive. If you do so, make sure you get the right servo horns from it. Vanquish does offer those as well. This is a really cool release for the start of 2023.